We're ready to get going. Welcome to Friends of the Rouge's annual membership meeting. My name is Marie McCormick. I am Executive Director of Friends of the Rouge, coming to you recorded from my sun porch here in my Dearborn home. Please excuse any random sounds of children. Those are just my 2 children in week 10 of quarantine, and my husband trying to manage them while also working. So it's as many of you are facing different challenges, we're facing similar here. I have the honor of kicking off this unique digital experience as a first of its kind for the organization. We really miss seeing you in person, but I'd like to assure each of you viewing this recording of our effort to transition our services to accommodate the current climate in the wake of the pandemic. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the monumental impact that COVID-19 has had across the globe, the lives lost, families who are grieving, those who serve at the front lines in healthcare, first responders, and all our essential workers who put their lives on the line every day for the greater good. Thank you to all of you. This also merits a pause to consider all of those who have lost their livelihood, their businesses, to those who have experienced extreme economic hardship as a result of this crisis. This moment in time touches each of us in a unique way. As I have commonly heard, we are not all in the same boat, but we are all in the same storm. While Friends of the Rouge has faced some critical challenges ourselves in the last 2 months, we have been fortunate enough to have an amazing and resilient team of dedicated staff, board members, volunteers, and members to offer many unique alternative experiences to participate in the programming that you have come to love with us. So most of you may already be familiar with our mission. It's our guiding mantra that helps all of us make our decisions here at Friends of the Rouge to restore, protect, and enhance the Rouge River watershed through stewardship, education, and collaboration. This is our vision. This is something that we came up with as an organization during our strategic planning. The vision we came up with is we envision a future where a clean and vibrant Rouge River is the center of our community. Individual and community actions protect and improve the health of the Rouge River, assuring that its natural, economic, and recreational value enhance the quality of life in the Rouge River ecosystem. And our core values, so these were also part of our strategic planning process, and they were finalized in 2019. Integrity, stewardship, education, evidence-based decision-making, community collaboration, quality of life, and diversity, equity, involvement. And those can be, you can read a little bit more about those on our website. And I really wanted to just point out Donnie Brewing Company. They offered us the use of their space to host our annual meeting this year. And they also graciously moved our date back to June after the original March meeting was canceled, until we realized we really couldn't in good conscience, or as of late May, legally, host a large gathering. So we wanted to take a moment to thank them for their intended hospitality and for their commitment to the community. They are known for donating to local causes like Friends of the Rouge and have been great partners with the Fort Street Rouge Gateway Partnership, also known as the Frog Group, of which we are actively involved to get the Fort Street Bridge Park built in Southwest Detroit. So thank you very much. And I wanted to also thank all of our members. This wouldn't be possible without your support. Normally at this time, I would ask all our current members to stand up and be recognized. And while I realize that's not possible with this virtual experience, I want you to know how thankful we are for your continued support. As the backbone of our organization, you provide the fuel that drives our mission. So as a result, the Friends of the Rouge continues to successfully sustain and expand programs and priorities to preserve, protect, and enhance the Rouge River watershed. So if you're not currently a member and you'd like to know more, please visit us online to sign up. We'd love to have you. At this point, I'd also like to acknowledge all our board members who were active in 2019. These board members have generously given of their time, talent, and treasure, the 3 T's of a successful board member. Each one of them have grown exponentially over the past year, stepping up as dedicated committee members, fundraisers, and committing to the exciting prospects for organizational sustainability. So we have our 2019 president was Michael Darga, our vice president, Alice Bailey, secretary, Susan Thompson, and treasurer, Andrew Hoffman. Our 2019 directors were Dr. Paul Draus, John Kelly, Oren Gelderloos, Dr. Oren Gelderloos, Scott Martin, Mike McNulty, Dave Norwood, Betsy Palazzola, Mike Rudell, Brandy Solacek, Al Van Kerkhove, and Laura Wagner. New as of 2020, our new president is Laura Wagner. And then we have 3 new directors, John Deslip, Bill Hazel, and Dave Maurice. And we have 3 board members that retired as of last year, Michael Darga, who we will recognize later in this presentation, John Kelly, and Scott Martin. So I'm speaking to members. Your participation in the annual elections is really critical in forming an incredible board. So we will be voting for board members again in November, starting November 9th. You'll have a window of about 1 month, so please be ready to vote. Voting by proxy will be available again this year, so we'll send out a link on or before November 9th. Please let us know if you'd like to be considered for a board position, or you know someone who wants to join. You can email me at mmccormick@therouge.org for details, and we also have opportunities to join our board committee as well, board committees. We have 8 official board committees of the board, 7 of which are open to the general membership. And those include board development, fund development, finance committee, Lower Rouge River Water Trail Leadership Committee, the membership committee, public involvement advisory committee, Rouge Education Project Committee, and our executive committee, which is restricted to officers. And we also have a new opportunity to join our advisory committee. If you have any questions about any of those committees, please feel free to reach out to me, and I would be happy to share more information. Additionally, committee descriptions are available on our website under our board, and so you can read about each of them at your leisure. So at this time, I just want to talk about our staff. So I'm continually humbled by the passion and fortitude of the people that I have the privilege to work with every day. The Friends of the Rouge team not only hold expertise, but they really hold a heart for the work within our watershed. Each day, they share their talents with the community. They give endlessly of their time beyond the confines of their job duties. So I'm gonna list them all alphabetical in order by last name, and you will get to hear from them throughout this presentation. So first is Matthew Bertrand, our Restoration Coordinator, Aaron Cassidy, Education Manager, Laura Edwards, Development Coordinator, Karen Hanna, Operations Director, Jacqueline Heckela, Restoration Assistant, Sally Petrella, Watershed Monitoring Manager, and Cindy Ross, our Restoration Manager. So normally at annual meetings, you all get the opportunity to see each of these incredible people in person. While that's not possible, continue to reach out to all of us. Set up a virtual coffee if you wish to chat further. We love to hear from all of you. So kicking off our Keystone meeting to discuss 2019, our programs continue to develop with the needs of our community and the changing watershed landscape. You'll see that progress in the membership report later this evening. As you listen to this virtual program, we hope it inspires continued participation with the Friends of the Rouge. We thrive because of the generosity of so many who provide both volunteer and financial support. We know the value of that generosity and thank all who have made that work to protect and preserve the Rouge River possible. For those of you who have tirelessly dedicated time and energy to the success of the organization, thank you. For those of you who are new, welcome. We look forward to working with all of you in 2020 and beyond. I wanted to just take a moment to show you this really interesting graphic that was developed in-house by Laura and Matthew. We plan to use these metrics as a placard in our annual reports, and in other ways throughout our digital media as well. Of course, our annual reports are sitting printed in my office in Plymouth, which I'm not at right now. But we'd welcome any feedback you have regarding this additional tool. So with that, I would like to introduce Karen Hanna, our Operations Director, who will discuss our 2019 financial performance.
My name is Karen Hanna, and I'm the Operations Director here at Friends of the Rouge. In order for Friends of the Rouge to fulfill its mission and accomplish its goals and objectives, along with strong and proven programs, the organization needs revenue, and it needs to spend that revenue effectively and efficiently. For the next 3 slides, I will be discussing the organization's 2019 fiscal year revenues by source and expenses by use. Next slide. This pie chart is a representation of all of the sources of funding for the organization in 2019. As you can see, our strongest support came from the foundation sector at over 30% of total revenue. This is an increase over last year of nearly 45%. Government grants and other grants, grants from corporations, associations, organizations, and local governments provided significant restricted support for specific programs. Unrestricted corporate support and public support, including membership, made up 19% of our total revenue. This support is up 16% over last year. Fundraisers, including our Rouge Cruise, Free Press Marathon, Capital Campaign, and other appeals, brought in much needed unrestricted support in 2019. The community support that you see here on the left of your screen comes from our Rouge River Watershed Community's commitment to support our water trail, benthic macroinvertebrate, monitoring, and Rain Smart programs. Other revenues were made up of speaker fees, workshop fees, and fair share fees for our Rouge Education Project. Rounding our revenue pie chart is the 7% result of gains we realized on our investments. This is a significant increase from last year's loss on our investments of $18,000. Next slide. Before I move on to our expenses, it's important to note that in accordance with nonprofit generally accepted accounting principles, committed revenue must be accounted for in the year that it's promised. This meant that Friends of the Rouge had an additional working revenue of $319,200, bringing the total available working revenue $56,750. Next slide. This chart illustrates our functional in 2019. Look first at our operations expenses, or overhead. To put this into perspective, the Better Business Bureau states that no more than 35% of an organization's budget should be allocated to operating expenses. Friends of the Rouge's operating expenses were a little below 30% for 2019. Respectively, over half, or 52%, of our expenditures were program expenses. You can see on the right hand of this pie chart the programs that expenses were used for: education, monitoring, restoration, and water trail. Moving to the bottom left of the chart, Friends of the Rouge's commitment to strategic planning, outreach, and advocacy saw spending in those areas of a little over 8%. And finally, in 2019, Friends of the Rouge spent 5% of our budget on fundraising, which is well within the goal set by Charity Navigator of less than 10%. Looking ahead to 2020, Friends of the Rouge continues to focus on diversifying our funding sources and producing meaningful, efficient, and sustainable programming and initiatives. We look forward to the ever-changing opportunities to collaborate and partner with other nonprofits and foundation leaders to increase our effectiveness and to maintain our financial stability well into the future. And now back to Marie.
So I wanted to take a moment to talk about the earned media collaborative with our sister watershed groups, Friends of the Detroit River, the Huron River Watershed Council, and the Clinton River Watershed Council from last year. We celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Rouge River catching on fire, and from that came an incredible amount of media that was supported from the Herb Family Foundation. So the Earned Media Collaborative, Robar and Near Perfect Media, used a platform called Meltwater to come up with some statistics that help us understand how earned media is generated. This first graph here demonstrates the number of impressions that were generated from our earned media. We had over 113 million, as seen here on this chart, which I'm proud to say topped our 3 sister watershed groups. Additionally, the media exposure leveraged over 171 media hits alone in the Rouge. And the Clinton did have more media hits than us. However, the way that earned media, or the advertising value equivalency widget, it places a monetary value on the media coverage, meaning that our impressions and our media hits equated to nearly $1 million, as seen here in this slide, in earned media. So this staggering escalation of regional and national attention put Friends of the Rouge at the forefront of mind for state and national leadership. Here's an image of Rashida Tlaib and Debbie Dingle kayaking with Friends of the Rouge and Riverside Kayak Connection as a way to bring sort of a little bit more attention to the moment. And Sally Petrelli can tell you more about it when she talks about our water trail. But there was a helicopter flying after them. There was media before and after interviewing the group. So it was a very successful day. And it was really to commemorate the following day, which is 50 years after the Rouge caught fire. That was on October 9th, 2019. We stood with many other collaborating partners to break ground on a brand new park, the Fort Street Bridge Park. So this was a decade in the making, and it was led by the Fort Rouge Gateway Partnership, or the FROG. This park commemorates the 1932 Hunger March, but really with a colorful historical complexity that intertwines the labor movement and the environmental movement so closely that their stories really can't be told alone. So the fire in the Rouge led Congressman John D. Dingle to create and pass the Clean Water Act with numerous other environmental legislation that set in motion cleanup efforts so that today we can now see ourselves kayaking on a river that was once on fire. And Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and Debbie Dingle stood with us that day and spoke about the park as a symbol for rebirth, as a focal point for the community to link back to itself through land and water. Congresswoman Dingle said she never felt so close to John, the late congressman, her husband, as she did when kayaking the Rouge just the day before in the images I just showed you. So this park stands for hope, not just for the community where it grows, but for all of Southeast Michigan, as we reinvent ourselves as a more connected, conscious, and motivated community. And that following day, we also celebrated additionally with a Rouge Burn anniversary. And this was right at Marine Pollution Control in Southwest Detroit, just down the road from Fort Street Bridge Park. And here you can see folks from Marine Pollution Control. They took a number of folks out on the old channel of Zug Island to check out the sediment remediation project. You can see Rose Ellison there. She's the EPA project coordinator, along with other folks who participated. We had Rashida Tlaib speak, and we also celebrated the longevity of marine pollution control in our community and all the wonderful contributions they've made to mitigation of pollution in the Rouge and beyond. Friends of the Rouge also took part in a number of different advocacy events throughout the year. So on the left, you can see me speaking at the Great Lakes Restoration announcement. There we shared some success stories about the Rouge River recovery, where we advocated for the enhancement of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding. This was at a press event with Senator Debbie Dingell and Senator Gary Peters on Belle Isle in Detroit on August 22nd, 2019. We were joined by sister watershed group leaders from the Clinton River Watershed Council, Ann Brazy, and Friends of the Detroit River, Dave Howell. On the bottom right, you can see the Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist listening tour. The Friends of the Rouge represented at the Governor Gilchrist Thriving Cities Listening Tour at the Ford Community and Performing Arts Center. There we voiced concerns over crumbling water infrastructure and air pollution issues faced in Southwest Detroit and East Dearborn. The small right photo on the top was the Dingell Environmental Town Hall. There we had Sally Petrell, you can see her speaking, where she participated in a town hall discussion in an effort to clean up industrial pollution of the past across downriver communities. I believe at that event, there was Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, State Senator Stephanie Chang, State Representative Cara Clement, and State Representative Darren Camilleri that was October 7th at the Wyandotte Boat Club. And then on the center top, that's a photo of the water school and water school participants, where we took folks out on a field trip following a day and a half of in-classroom modules learning about water. We really focused that school on elected and appointed officials, and it's in partnership with Michigan Sea Grant and Michigan State University Extension. With that, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Laura Edwards, our newest staff member and our development coordinator. She will discuss membership. So at this point, Laura, I turn the mic over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Edwards, and I am your newest team member on with Friends of the Rouge. I started at the end of last year, and before coming to Friends of the Rouge, I worked for a small grassroots environmental nonprofit, and I have a background in both business and science. I am married to a professor at Oakland University and have 3 awesome kids. So with that, I'll show you your membership numbers. 304 total members. But I want to point out that that literally is just a number. And behind that 304 are really incredible people like you. Folks who were inspired to make a difference and to join Friends of the Rouge. And it is my pleasure and honor to get to know all of you. You all have a unique story to share. What drives you to make a difference? How did you find Friends of the Rouge? And I look forward to hearing all of them. And so please consider this an open invitation. My email is in the slide below to reach out whenever you would like and tell me more about yourself. Share your story. And because I'm asking you for your story, I will in turn share mine. And so if you could go to the next slide, please. My story of how I got involved with Friends of the Rouge can really be boiled down to this vision, our vision. So do you remember when you were a kid in Michigan on that hot summer day, and you're by the water with friends or family, and you feel yourself just getting hotter and hotter until you can't stand it, and you race full throttle into the water, screaming, and all around you, kids are shrieking, and footballs are being tossed, and dogs are splashing, and you just feel this incredible joy of being in the water. And it strikes me as wrong that many of us have that memory, and yet we would never let a kid do the same thing in the river in our own backyard. It's simply too polluted. I think Southeast Michigan deserves better. You know, as Michiganders, we travel our state to enjoy our freshwater resources. But I don't think pure Michigan should be a 4-hour drive away. It shouldn't even be one. And so I ask you to imagine a Rouge River that is clean and vibrant, a river and ribbon of blue connecting us neighbor to neighbor across this entire region, this amazing gem that we can use to recreate, to play, to see nature and connect with it, a place we can let our kids splash and play and explore. The river will not fix itself. It takes you, it takes me, it takes all of us working together. You as a member and a friend of the Rouge, you know this the best. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you and working together towards this vision. Thank you. With that, I will turn it over to my amazing colleague, Cindy, Restoration Manager, who is doing awesome things for this watershed.
Thanks, Laura. I too share your vision and really look forward to the day that we can jump in the river and have a good time. So much of the work that I do hopefully will help bring us to that a little bit closer with every action that we take. Many of you know me. I'm Cindy Ross. I'm the Restoration Program Manager at Friends of the Rouge. And the work that we do through restoration involves Rouge Rescue, our annual river cleanup event, as well as our Rain Gardens to the Rescue, Land and Waterworks, the Rouge River Green Infrastructure Education, Installation and Marketing Program. And those latter three are really focused on rain garden education and installation. And in 2019, I'm really happy to say that through those programs, we engaged 2,200 people and installed 35 rain gardens that will manage nearly 72,000 gallons of the first inch of rainfall every time it rains. Next slide, please. So Rouge Rescue, excuse me, is our our annual river cleanup event, which I have much of you to thank for the success of that program. In 2019, we attracted over 1,300 volunteers who participated in river cleanup and stewardship activities throughout the watershed at 31 work sites and 33 work sessions in 18 communities. This is still one of the largest cleanup events in our country, certainly the state of Michigan. Next slide, please. Next slide. Our army of volunteers are really making an impact. For us today, and oops, you went one slide too far. Thanks. For us today, and as well as for future generations. In 2019, we together removed 52.5 cubic yards of trash and over 9,100 cubic yards of invasive plant material. Huge. certainly we could not do that alone. It takes an army to get that work done. We also planted over 1,500 native flowers and grasses and 39 native trees. This helps tremendously with stormwater management, and along riverbanks helps to anchor the soil and reduce localized erosion. We cleaned and opened 6 log jams, so removing the man-made trash and moving some of the floating wood in order to allow for canoe passage, and also strategically placing that wood so that we can help to also reduce localized erosion of the stream banks. And we maintained over 4,000 feet of trails during those few hours of Rouge Rescue. Many of you don't remember what the Rouge looked like before citizens took action to clean it up. The rollbacks of our environmental regulations really threaten the good work that has been done to improve the Rouge River and our natural resources. So I do encourage you, let's keep it moving in the right direction. Together, we really are making a difference. Next slide, please. New for 2019, we developed a system to better display our Rouge Rescue work sites so that volunteers could find a site based on the community that they live in, or even they could do a quick search based on the activities being conducted at the site. And then once volunteers were able to select a site that they wanted, you could then click to find more details about the work happening at the site, as well as a map to the location, the meeting location, and where the work would occur. Next slide, please. Our Rain Gardens to the Rescue program engaged 270 Detroit residents and professionals working in Detroit in learning about rain gardens as a solution for urban stormwater problems and acting to help alleviate the problems as they help to install 8 rain gardens in Detroit and the East Side Detroit neighborhoods. Upon completion of a 5-class training session, participants in the Rain Gardens to the Rescue program directly those folks, upon completing the workshop series, were receiving rain gardens, and together they installed 8 rain gardens, and each garden recipient recruited friends, neighbors, and family to help with the installation of their rain gardens. Cohorts in the class also put in a little sweat equity to help their classmates install at least 2 additional rain gardens in addition to their own. So that's just layers of education, awareness, and involvement throughout the program to engage more people and just to elevate the involvement. The gardens themselves ranged from 50 square feet in size to 320 square feet in size, and keep over 8,000 gallons of rainwater out of the combined sewer system, saving the cost of treating that water at the wastewater treatment plant, which is really expensive to treat, but also really keeping that water out of the combined sewer system so that we're reducing that raw sewage overflows into our Rouge and Detroit rivers. Critical for the health of the river. The Rain Gardens to the Rescue program is much larger than just that piece, although that's the biggest piece. The program actually also, we have an event that kicks off the program called Green Your Neighborhood Community Forum. We also conducted bus tours to actually be able to showcase the gardens that we put in and to educate others about what they can do at home to reduce the stormwater problem. We knew this year, 2019, we engaged our participants in a storytelling project. And this was funded by a grant to the Sierra Club, who is our partner organization on this project, to sort of engage our residents in telling their story. Why did they care about the rain garden? Why did they get a rain garden? Why do they care about them? And how have they impacted their lives? And so we created a little mini zine called The Monarch. And we do have links to that on our website, so feel free to check that out and learn more about our gardeners and how those gardens have impacted their lives. This year, we actually created a pilot program that we announced during last year's annual meeting, the Stormwater Specialist Training. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But the program, the Rain Gardens to the Rescue program, to date has installed 70 rain gardens, engaged 100 Detroit residents in this enhanced education on rain gardens, and actually engaged over 600 people at the installation of these gardens. Next slide, please. The Green Your Neighborhood Public Forum, as I mentioned, sort of kicks off the Rain Gardens to the Rescue program. This past year was a phenomenal year for this event. We had 83 attendees who learned about the correlation between green infrastructure and improved public health. We brought in a speaker, Dr. Kathleen Wolf from the University of Washington, and she really shared her amazing research on how green infrastructure really helps with our mental frame of mind, but not only that, our physical health and well-being. We also had Dr. Kirkes from the University of Michigan speak on how sensor technology can better manage our stormwater infrastructure. And in addition, we had Sandeep Varma, a PhD student from Wayne State University, share some of his research and some really cool sensor technology that they're using to monitor for harmful algal blooms in Lake Erie to prevent what happened in Toledo several years ago when that bacteria threatened their freshwater intake, and the community didn't have fresh drinking water, tap water, for several days. So really amazing stuff happening in the world of water. And so we were happy to bring these speakers and share that information to the broader public. And then, of course, in keeping with the tradition of our Green Your Neighborhood event, we are focused on educating Detroiters and engaging the community with actions that we can all take to protect our water resources right from our home. And so our many of our partner organizations, Keep Growing Detroit, the National Wildlife Federation, Detroit Audubon, and others shared sessions that people could, actions that people could do at home to protect our water resources and green their neighborhood. Next slide, please. This 2019, we launched our pilot program, the Detroit Stormwater Specialist Training. This is an 8-week, 16-class course where our participants, we actually targeted this first year, the participants to the Rain Gardens to the Rescue graduates. And from that pool of volunteers, we had 9 people attend this 8-week, 16-class course where they received much more advanced training on the hydrology, soils, assessing site conditions, taking rain garden measurements and sizing, plant identification, as well as more intense training on maintaining rain gardens, with the hope that this workforce development training course could engage these people in collecting pay to do some of this work, particularly maintenance, because that is a common issue with many of our communities that are working to install green infrastructure. Is how do we keep these gardens maintained? We don't have a large pool of educated, trained and skilled workforce to do this work. And so we're helping to create that. And I'm really excited to say that one of our graduates was hired by Dr. Kirkes from the U of M Water School to install and maintain sensors to monitor 7 of our rain gardens and potentially more in the coming years. We're really excited about that. And the course itself culminated with the installation of a 1,200 square foot rain garden at St. Suzanne Côte Rouge Resource Community Center. And the garden collects rainwater from over 9,000 square foot of roof. And we disconnected 9 downspouts from the church and school, and the garden is actually situated between them. And we're keeping over 6,000 gallons of rainwater out of the combined sewer system every time it rains with that one project. So we're going to continue that program in 2020. This is a program that we really want to hold in person. Our Rain Gardens for the Rescue course this year, due to the COVID crisis, is going to be held online. And we really feel like the stormwater specialist training needs to happen in person. So we're going to schedule that in September so that we can actually engage people in person and do a lot of this training in the field where it's more valuable. Next slide, please. Our Land and Waterworks program. This is a coalition between 10 nonprofit organizations led by Detroit Future City. It's focused on green infrastructure and advancing green infrastructure in the city of Detroit. This year, so Friends of the Rouge's role in collaboration with the Sierra Club is to put on rain garden workshops and do some rain garden demonstration projects at some larger sites. So we're focused on connecting with houses of worship, schools, and larger nonprofit organizations. So in 2019, we connected with Cristo Rey High School in Southwest Detroit and Oak Grove African American Episcopal Church to put on a series of 3 workshops, and one of those workshops was a hands-on demonstration planting. The workshops themselves really focused on introducing that audience to the stormwater problem that we have in the city of Detroit, the combined sewer system, and really promoting rain gardens as a low-cost solution that really anyone can implement as long as you have a little space to put in a rain garden. So we also got participants' hands a little dirty with the hands-on demonstration garden installations. So we're connecting with a newer audience. So we're bringing the community around. So with Cristo Rey, we're bringing in those high school students and engaging them in learning about rain gardens and teaching them how to plant. Many of them don't necessarily have any experience planting a garden before. In Southwest Detroit, though, many of them have experience with vegetable gardens and not the native rain gardens and using gardens to manage water. So at Cristo Rey, we were excited to have to work with the students as well as volunteers from GM to install a 700 square foot rain garden that actually collects rainwater from the elementary school, the Holy Redeemer Elementary School connected to the site, and put in the rain garden on the property of the high school. Together, they will get a green credit for managing that stormwater. The garden itself is designed to manage just under a 2-inch rain event and is keeping over 4,000 gallons of rainwater out of the system. At Oak Grove Church, they actually received 2 rain gardens to manage over 4,000 gallons of water every time it rains. We were able to collect rainwater from most of the roof of the church, and because they were doing, the project actually was timed very nicely in the fact that they were doing some reconstruction at the site, and we were able to direct more roof runoff to go into the the garden than we would have prior to that project taking place. They also, this project was one piece of a larger project that Detroit Future City provided a mini grant to the church to really work at excavating the site to get that project rolling. And so our involvement was really just to design the planting and work with volunteers to install the planting after the workshops. In addition to the rain garden education and installation work through the Land and Water Works program, Friends of the Rouge and Sierra Club work together to provide training for the Land and Water Works Ambassador program. This is where we have folks from the community as well as nonprofit organizations sign up to become ambassadors. Detroit Future City really leads that work, but we support by providing rain garden training as well as downspout disconnection trainings, both hands-on and in class. And then we work with the ambassadors in the community to connect them with residents who need their downspouts disconnected. And we've done community service days to do that work. In 2019, we were actually awarded a grant from the Nature Conservancy, a $20,000 grant to develop interpretive signage for our Land and Water Works rain garden locations. To date, we have 8 rain garden sites through that program, and those sites received helped us by participating in some community in input sessions to develop the content of these informative signs, and then 2 of our sites actually hosted an open house so that the community could come see those signs and learn more about rain gardens. And so one of those sites we chose as a site to have that open house was our Cristo Rey site. And it was really awesome because the high school students themselves gave a presentation to the community who came to that event. And a couple of the students put together the presentation and delivered that presentation to the community. And then they all took folks from the community out to see their rain garden with their signage. So I do want to thank our restoration team. I did not do this work alone, and I want to first acknowledge Jackie Hecula, who really was the key person in organizing our Rouge Rescue in 2019 as well as 2020. And then introduce you to and thank Matthew Bertrand for all of his work with the rain garden work that he's doing and he's about to share with you. So I'm going to turn it over to Matthew to continue informing you of the rain garden work that we've done in 2019.
All right, thank you so much, Cindy, and thank you so much for all of your hard work on behalf of the Rouge River. So as Cindy said, my name is Matthew Bertrand. I'm a restoration coordinator with Friends of the Rouge, and I've been with Friends of the Rouge since 2017. My background is in landscape architecture, and my passion is helping you to get your lawn a job. So to make your home a beautiful space that is helping the Rouge River by soaking up as much rain as possible. So the majority of the problems the river experiences these days are from the stormwater runoff from our homes, our businesses, our places of worship, our community centers, and our homes are actually half of that problem. Half of the Rouge River is made up of single-family homes. So I am excited to work with each and every one of you to make a difference right at your home. So I'm excited to share the work that we did in 2019. We're grateful for the support from the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy. They supported us building 15 rain gardens in the Rouge River watershed. And we engaged about 1,200 people total in this work, building those rain gardens through a series of educational workshops across the watershed. So you can see a few of those builds pictured here. And through the next few slides, I'm going to step you through a few before and after so you can get a sense for the beautiful work that we can help you to do at your home showcasing rain gardens in your community. Next slide, please. All right, here's a before picture in Canton. This is a front yard space with two neighbors side by side who shared the same problem with flooding in the swale that drains their two homes. You can see that standing water there. They have got Canton clay. That water doesn't go anywhere. It just sits there and it ices up on the sidewalk in the wintertime. You show the after. Next slide, please. So here you go. Here was what we supported them to do. We built two rain gardens, one on each neighbor's property. You can see we lined them with a stacked wall stone. We tried to make the gardens fit into the neighborhood. They already had stacked wall stone on the property, and many of the neighbors had that same style as well. And planted mostly native sedges in that front yard space. So there'd be a nice clean look. And I'm excited to see how those plants grow in the coming years. So great before and after solution for that family. Next slide, please. Here is one of the public sites that we built. So we did about 8 public sites and 7 private residences. So this is the Plymouth Municipal Yard in downtown Plymouth. And this massive roof that you can't truly see, all drained right to their front space, creating icing problems in the wintertime. So they wanted to solve the icing problems, and they also wanted to make a more inviting, warm entryway. So let's go to the after. Next slide, please. There we go. So you can see there about 1,200 square feet of asphalt ripped up and removed. And in its place, beautiful, pretty typical. We tried for a kind of a corporate landscape feel with the yew plants, a lot of structure. We played with tree grates that we embedded vertically there, so you can see for some texture. And there's going to be a lot of grass in the bottom that'll fill in over time. So a much more inviting entryway that solves problems. Next slide. All right, and this will be the last one that I show for our before and after pairings. This is a home in the Plymouth Township area that also experienced problems with rain. Heavy clay near Tonquish Creek. Let's go to the after now. So zooming in there, you can see how we built a garden, extended off of the existing landscape that they'd had, and used Michigan boulders, which they already had on site, to extend the same sort of feel that was already there, but to also solve problems with water at the same time. And you can see some of the Ford volunteers that we had there that helped build it. So there, with those 3 before and after pairings, you can see just a few samples for some of the great ways that you can get your lawn a job to soak up that rain, and also to create habitat as well while we're at it for birds, butterflies, and other wild creatures. Well, thank you all very much for your time and attention today. I'm going to pass this on now, if you want to go to the next slide, to Erin Cassidy, who is the Rouge's education manager, and she's a rock star. She brings thousands of kids to the river every year, so I'm excited to pass the microphone to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthew, and thanks for all your rain garden and restoration work. I always love seeing those before and afters. They're really, really beautiful. I'm Erin Cassidy. I'm the education manager with Friends of the Rouge, and our Rouge Education Project helps schools conduct a field trip along the Rouge River to assess its health. So students look at the bugs living along the bottom of the river, they run chemical tests, and complete a physical stream survey looking at local land use and other characteristics. 2019 was the 32nd year of the program, and while keeping the core mission and structure of the program the same, we saw a lot of really exciting changes come to fruition last year. Next slide, please. We held our usual large-scale spring and fall monitoring events, reaching 2,631 students throughout the year, and were able to bring on 6 new schools. It was our largest fall monitoring event to date, continuing a planned shift in timeline from a main spring monitoring event to a main fall monitoring event. So this allows our classes more time throughout the rest of the school year to refer back to the field trip and discuss what they learned. Next slide, please. So we are focusing on expanding our Rouge Education Project to not only include that one field trip at the river, but also to empower our participants to apply the knowledge and awareness gained through their monitoring to identify and address environmental issues within their Rouge River watershed and beyond when they're residents of any watershed. We host an artwork contest every year based around a theme chosen by our education committee. The winner is featured on a poster that is typically distributed to our schools the following April. Last year's theme was "What's in Your Watershed?" and students were asked to design trading cards that answered that question. The image that you see on the left is all of our winners, and our wonderful graphic designer was able to put it in this really cool format for our poster. After almost a decade-long hiatus, our Student Congress event, or we now refer to it as the Student Symposium, was brought back, and it was hosted at Schoolcraft College in Livonia in November. Students were able to interact, share their fall monitoring results, reflect on their findings, and identify and explore issues in their community based on what they learned. We had experts from some of our other partner organizations there to talk with students during breakout sessions, including Earth Force, the U.S. Forest Service, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and the GLOBE program. It was a very inspiring event. It was so cool to see all the students out there interacting, and it gave them experience in a real conference-like setting at Schoolcraft College. Next slide, please. Our training events looked a little differently than they have in previous years, and that reflects changes that we've been working on for the past few years now. We hosted 11 workshops throughout the spring, summer, and fall for our teachers and volunteers. It was a lot, but it was really, really great. This included bug identification and sampling techniques, chemical trainings, how to engage students in community action, and a course for returning teachers complete with a reflection and planning time. This was the first year a Summer Institute was held, and that is a week-long training event with different workshops each day, and it worked out great. We have definitely put our new laboratory to good use at the new office. I also hosted a little monitoring day with a STEAM camp, so they were a science, technology, engineering, art, and math camp from St. Suzanne's Community Resource Center in Detroit last August. I met a group of students at Rouge Park in Detroit to show them how to check out river health using the same parameters that we do for our Rouge Education project. It was a really cool opportunity to get these students in nature, to learn about a river some admitted that they had never seen in person before, even though where they were meeting for their camp was just down the road from the spot at the river where we met. Looking ahead, our education umbrella is going to grow from not only working with young people, but to incorporating more outreach events and the development of a robust suite of fee-based presentations and other workshops available for the general public and our local and elected officials. We will also continue to support our schools with any projects that they decide to take on by offering funding through a student project contest next school year. That is our hope. We'll keep our fingers crossed that we're still able to do that. It was another really exciting year for the education project last year, and right now we're adapting to our current situation by exploring virtual training opportunities and student engagement at home. So while things have looked a bit different for us this spring with the schools being closed, we are continuing to do the work in just a slightly different way. Thank you so much for listening to my education update, and I will now turn it over to Sally Petrella, our monitoring manager, to discuss last year's monitoring efforts. Sally?
Thanks, Erin. I hope, can you guys all hear me? Do a thumbs up if you can. Okay, it's great to follow Erin. I love to see all the work that she's doing with all these students. You think about 32 years, and so many of those students go on to participate in my monitoring programs, and many of them have even come to work for Friends of the Rouge. So we're having a great impact over all those years. So thanks everybody for sticking with us for this long. Again, I am Sally Petrella, live from my home office where I have been working out of for the last 60 days. So much rather be out there in person with you, but this is how we stay safe. So monitoring, as we work to restore this broken river, monitoring is critical to help us figure out if what we're doing, if all this restoration work is having any impact. If we don't monitor it, we're not going to know what things we do actually help to improve the river. And unfortunately, in 2019, which is the year that we're reporting on for this presentation, there was a lot of great funding through the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and through the EPA to do boots on the ground projects to restore. And that's great, but one of the things that got left out of that a little bit was funding to do the monitoring. And so our monitoring programs were really suffering from a lack of funding. And so we had to really double down and try to find some new and more stable funding sources. At the same time, you know, we have volunteers, wonderful volunteers that have been doing these programs, the frog and toad survey, our bug hunts and our stonefly searches and our fish surveys for years. And they remained enthusiastic and very strong. And several of them even came forward to offer assistance in fundraising. One couple, Linda Grant and Stuart Steele, they gave $1,000 of their own money to help keep the program going. Got a lot of people interested in contributing. One of our team leaders, Julia Sosin, offered to do research for us to help us find grants, which was really, really helpful. So next slide, please. There we go. So for the Frog and Toad survey, we held just one workshop in Bloomfield Hill or Bloomfield Township. We had 53 attendees, and then we have so many veteran surveyors. We had a total of 121 surveyors, and they signed up to survey 176 blocks. Our annual group listen that we hold out in West Bloomfield at the Nature Preserve in conjunction with West Bloomfield Parks and Rec and the Detroit Audubon Society, we had 83 people show up. So those were members, those were watershed residents, those were surveyors, and it really showed that people in this watershed do really care about our amphibian friends. And they were treated by seeing some red-backed salamanders that we found and also hearing chorus frogs and spring peepers. You can go to the next slide. So what are we finding? Because we only held one workshop, we didn't have as many people survey. So we had 60 survey teams and they returned data for 100 blocks. Which still, if you look at the map on the right, all those boxes was where somebody was surveying just in 2019. So that's a lot of information. They were hearing about 3.6 species per block, so that's pretty good. And the map is actually showing you the American toads. So the green boxes are where American toads were heard. The pink ones are where they were not. And if any of you have been out in the watershed recently, they are calling from all over. That's our most tolerant species. Our healthiest parts of the watershed continue to be the western side, your Superior and Salem Townships, Northville, and Canton area. So next slide, please. One of the really exciting things this year is that member and former surveyor, Kathy Abelson, when she did the survey, with her son, she was a little frustrated that she had trouble learning the calls, and she wished for something she could take out in the field to help her to can I check, is that a spring peeper? Can I play it? And so she checked into it, and there was nothing like what she imagined out there. And so she took it upon herself to design an app. And she showed this to me, and I was really excited to buy it. And so she asked for my feedback. I roped in James Harding. He's the state expert on frogs and toads from MSU. And some of our volunteers reviewed this, and I think she came up with an excellent product. So she did the drawings of the frogs. They might look cartoonish, but they actually show you the characteristics, like that wood frog has a black mask. The spring peeper has a cross on the back. And so you just press on each frog, and I can't really demonstrate it because it's not live, but it'll play the call. There's also an option to hit multicolor, because oftentimes when you're out there, you've got wood frogs, spring peepers, chorus frogs, all calling at the same time. So that can help you pick them out. And then there's also a little question mark you can press on to get more information about where you might find them at what time of year they're calling. So she calls this Froggy Voice. I guess all the other better names were taken. And we rolled it out this year, and people just love it. So thank you, Kathy. Keep going. Our next slide, please. So our bug hunts. We decided to try something new this year for the stonefly search, since we can't really do any training outdoors in the middle of January. So we created this event called a stonefly refresher that we held in the new Bosch lab. And we invited team leaders and regular volunteers. We had 20 people show up, very enthusiastic, some kids. And board member and bug expert Sue Thompson led most of the training. You can see her up there pointing at the slide. She is giving everybody a quiz to see how well they learned their stoneflies. So people like that so much, we repeated that in 2020. But by spring of 2019, the grant that we had been expecting to come through continued to be held up because it was coming through what was the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and our governor was reorganizing that into EAGLE. So that grant did not come through, and that really forced us, without funding, to cancel our spring bug hunt. But our volunteers are so strong, and so we worked together with Wayne County, the REP. Aaron led some sites, and some of our volunteers that were free during the day, that's Brian and Bill and Paul, came out and helped us do some sites. So we were still able to do 16 sites and not have any gaps in that 19 years of data. For the fall bug hunt, we decided to go ahead, in part because we have such a great relationship with Schoolcraft College, and they sponsor the site and provide refreshments, saving us a lot of money. So we were still able to do 20 sites with 76 volunteers. Next slide. So what are we finding? If you look on the right side of the slide, this is what we found in 2019. So the stonefly search, not quite half of the sites had stoneflies, which is pretty good. The spring monitoring, even though we did far fewer sites, it still gave us the same trend that we've been seeing, and that the middle branch scores have been improving. And then in the fall, we saw trends we've been seeing, which is the Johnson Creek and the middle 3 are improving. But we're really concerned about the main one too. That's the kind of the northern branch, the Bloomfield Birmingham branch of the Rouge. As well as the upper, which would be West Bloomfield, Farmington, Farmington Hills, and also the lower one in Canton seem to be declining. So we're a little bit concerned about that. Looking at that map there, there's a lot of up and down in the data. There's a lot of up and down in the river, as some of you might have noticed recently. And when you have big rain events, then the bugs might get washed out. So there can be a lot of up and down in the data. So that map is showing you averages over the 19 years of doing this work. So the orange circles are sites that were fair, which is pretty good, although a little concerning that we have so much of that. We need those all to get green. The green boxes are our best sites in the watershed. So you can see in the Canton area, like with the Frog and Toad survey, the Canton area, the Northville area, that's our Johnson Creek that starts out in Salem Township and goes into Northville. It's a cold water trout stream, still in pretty good shape, although a lot of development pressure. So pockets of really good benthic communities there. A neat site up in the northern end, up in Troy, where we even find a very rare sensitive dragonfly. And then kind of interesting that right there at 8 Mile on the main branch, we're seeing pretty good results. And one of the things just downstream of there is where there's a lot of uncontrolled combined sewer overflows that is definitely impacting sites downstream. Then those red triangles up in Southfield, you've got Evans Creek, which is in so many pipes. It's a very degraded stream. But there are some projects that are coming online to try to assist with that. And then we also have some sites farther down on the main in Hines near Nankin that are not as in good a shape. And there is a project at Nankin Mills coming up that will help deal with that impoundment. So next slide. So fish surveys. Similar to the bug hunt, we have had the same source we were depending on to do the surveys, and it did not come through from EAGLE. And our 2 fish technicians thought it was so important to do this work that they agreed to do a minimum number of sites without getting any compensation. So that's Bob Muller in the center of the photo, the shortest guy there. And then in the green shirt is Phil Kukowski. They run our surveys. Then we had some wonderful dedicated volunteers, Jared Jankowski on the left. That's Robert Harar, and his twin brother, Robert, is usually with him. In fact, he comes more often, and then Bill Eisenman again. And we had quite a few other volunteers help too. We were able to do 14 sites over 7 survey days. We mainly focused on looking for the red-side dace, our endangered minnow, tracking the round goby and its effect on the lower fish community, and then looking at the recently opened Oxbow at Greenfield Village. Next slide. So not so good news with the endangered red-side dace. We did not find any. In fact, we have not seen any since 2012. So we're hoping some still survive in the river. And there is at least one project coming online this year to help improve habitat in the upper Rouge where they're found. With the invasive round goby, it continues to move up the lower branch since they opened up that dam at Wayne Road. It's now as far as Beck Road, and they are basically wiping out all of our native Johnny darters in that branch, so not a good thing. On the positive side, the Oxbow had more species and total fish after it was opened up to the main river, although unfortunately quite a few of those fish were round goby. So next slide. Oh, yes, well, no, you can go back here. So what's in store for monitoring in 2020? Our exploration of new and stable funding sources has really begun to pan out. We decided to ask the cities and the villages and the townships where we sample for bugs to sponsor sites in their community. And surprisingly, quite a few of them, like Karen mentioned, agreed to do this at $550 a site per event. The Alliance of Rouge Communities sponsored our 2020 Stonefly Search. And happy to report that the Eagle funding came through for fish surveys, and it will cover 2, not 1 year. So 2 years of fish surveys. It will support some of the fall bug hunt this year, and then in 2021, completely support the fall bug hunt. So then in addition to that, the Frog and Toad survey received funding from Waste Management and the Michigan Association of Environmental Professionals, and the Bosch Community Fund came on as a regular sponsor for that program, so enabling us to hold 2 workshops this year, which unfortunately turned out to be 1, and some online training after we were forced to cancel the second workshop due to the COVID pandemic. But believe it or not, we have more surveyors than we've had in quite a few years, people that were willing to train online. And the Frog and Toad survey being one of the few things that you are allowed to do, even when you're told to stay at home. You still can go outside and experience nature and go out and listen to frogs and toads. People are figuring out how to do that. And then one last note with monitoring, from shrinking, we're growing monitoring, and we got some funding to survey for an aquatic invasive plant called European frogbit that is found in our watershed up in Novi. So in conjunction with Six Rivers Land Conservancy, Oakland County, and the other 2 watershed councils, Huron and Clinton, we're planning to do some work on that. Unfortunately, that grant did get stopped because it was state funded, but we are hoping that over time that will get reinstated and we'll be able to do that work. But thank you to all of the dedicated volunteers that make that program possible. So now I am going to move on to the Lower Rouge River Water Trail. So next slide, please. So this year, more reporters, grantors, and politicians paddled the Rouge River, I would say, than ever before. I don't know what happened way back when, but I think it's probably the most we've ever had. So we took Michigan Radio's Lester Graham out there. He's kind of slow. He's taking a lot of pictures. We love it. Fox 2's Jack Nissen, JJ from the Ralph C. Wilson Foundation. During our annual paddle, Under the Radar's Tom Dalden came along and even had a boat videotaping us so we could feature it on our show. And then, of course, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and Rashida Tlaib, and they were a riot. You know, Debbie had her pearls on, but not her high heels, and they were joking around, and I know it meant a lot. Debbie was very nervous about the tour, but she knew John would have wanted to do it. And then the remark that Rashida made afterwards, that as a kid, she had driven over that river to go to tennis like several times a week and had never realized that a river was there until we took her out. So definitely having a big impact. On to the next slide. Oh, wait a minute. One last thing, go back for a minute there. One last thing I did want to mention, we held 2 public trips, the one with Under the Radar, and then we also held a canoe trip on the Rouge, and a group of very dedicated volunteers opened up all the log jams. We had about 20 people come out one day, and so we had some enormous trees that we got through and opened it up so that we had a successful canoe trip on the lower. Go ahead. So the Lower Rouge River Water Trail Leadership Committee began meeting to develop this trail, and that is basically the communities that own that land or oversee that land along the trail. So they are the decision makers on this committee that oversees the trail that we manage. So that includes Canton, coming from the west, Canton, Wayne, Westland, Inkster, Dearborn Heights, Dearborn, Allen Park, Melvindale, Detroit, and River Rouge, as well as the county of Wayne, who owns a good deal of that property. So by the end of the year, all 10 communities and the county had signed a memorandum of understanding to work together with us on this trail. And with some funding from the Herb Family Foundation, we developed a strategic plan in which we identified all the areas that could be trailheads, you know, major launches, not major launches, and then rest stops. And to get input from the community, we held 2 open houses, one in April at Nankin Mills, where we asked for people to help us identify those areas, and then the one pictured on the left that we held in Westland in June to present the draft plan to get feedback from people. The plan was completed and approved by all of the communities by the end of the year, by the end of 2019. Go ahead. Next slide. There we go. We also created a really cool signage plan, starting with this neat logo with the red canoe in the Rouge River. And they created different types of signs. This program was funded with some funding from the county and the communities. The different communities helped provide the funding for this. So we have launch signs so that you can find where to put your boat in. We have rest stop signs where you, if you're on the water, you can figure out where you can pull out safely and sit for a while. We have mileage signs so you can figure out how far you are from the Detroit River, which is kind of the end of the trip. And then also some interpretive signs, safety information, and where you are in the watershed. So go to the next slide, please. We also developed a safety plan. None of us like to think about this, that God forbid somebody's out there in a boat, in a little boat, and something happens. And we wanted to make sure that there was a plan. And so we invited all of the EMS, fire, police, public safety officers that would potentially be involved in something like this. And that was an amazing meeting. They all speak a different language, and we learned so much, you know, about who calls 911, who responds to 911. If you call 911, I mean, you could be like 10 feet away from another place and it'll go to a different city. So it gets really complicated. We found out who has the resources to respond. Mainly Dearborn is trained in swift water rescue and has boats, and they're willing to provide this service for some of the communities. So because they had the majority of the experience, you know, Detroit has a dive team and some of these other communities have some resources. So they kind of led efforts with our consultant to put together this whole safety plan that also was completed at the end of the year and approved. So really excited to have that going. So what's coming up? Well, work on this trail continues to grow with funding from the National Kidney Foundation, the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan, the Ralph C. Wilson, and more. These funders are really helping us put this trail into fruition. By the end of next year, we should have 2 new accessible launches that are easy for people who have physical limitations to get into the river. Those are going to be going in Dearborn. And the route will be open for log jams. And then we have many other projects in the works, an additional 5 launches, log jam opening from Wayne all the way to Dearborn, and the installation of some of the signage. So please join us on the river, as paddling the river is one of the best ways to get to know this river we all love. So thank you. I'm going to pass the baton back to Marie.
Marie, we can't hear you.
Marie, yeah, we can't hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sally. That was a great presentation. I appreciate all of that information you shared with us, and to the rest of the group for your great presentations and all the work you're doing. Incredible. It's such an honor to be part of this team. So at this time, I am going to briefly introduce a couple of the different types of awards that we normally give out at our annual meetings. This year, we're introducing stewardship awards. So these stewardship awards last year went to some of our funding partners. This year, we're going to be honoring 2 really unique people who have basically dedicated a giant chunk of their life to Friends of the Rouge. So the very first person that I'm going to acknowledge, and again, we will have separate award videos with these individuals that you can click on in a separate link on the website where you found this link. So please join each of those individual awardees in accepting their awards. But at this time, I will go ahead and show you what those awards are going to look like. So the first award is going to Sally Petrella. She is our longest serving staff member, ringing it at 20 years of service. Sally's institutional knowledge has been an incredible resource for the organization. And she has been a mentor to me since I started working here 3.5 years ago. She knows literally every stretch of the river and every bug, every animal and fish. And so with that very short introduction, I do want to show Sally what we got for her. So we, one of the folks that works in the Plymouth Arts and Rec Complex building, Dan McMahon, his brother is a welder, and showed me some of these cool metal sculptures that he had built for Bees in the D, which is on the 3rd floor above us, and they were bees. So I said, Dan, what other kind of animals does your brother make? And so he gave me sort of this menu of animals. And so we decided that we thought the frog would be most fitting for Sally. And so it's a totally metal frog. And it will be mounted on a plaque and presented to Sally. So that's for Sally. And I have another little slide of Sally speaking, for interacting with our elected and appointed officials, and doing what she does best, being in the river and teaching people about all the wonderful things the river has to offer. So thank you, Sally.
Thank you.
Next up, Next, we're honoring our former board member and president, Mike Darga. We were really excited to, of course, present both of these awards to Sally and Mike in person, but we will just take a moment to remember and thank them both for all their service. So Mike Darga was on Friends of the Rouge board for 28 years. That's an incredible amount of time. And a large portion of that time, he was an officer, oftentimes serving as the chair of the board. And so he was a major mentor to me as well in my first couple of years of service with Friends of the Rouge. And, you know, I've only been here for 3 years. The other 25 years of his service here, the stories that people can share about Mike's experience with Friends of the Rouge are probably endless. So it's been a pleasure to work with Mike Darga. He's a truly a dedicated individual. His whole family is dedicated to the Rouge River. And I know his lovely wife, Nancy, told me about their first date was to go to the river, and he apparently fell into the river and he started laughing. And Nancy said, that was the moment I knew that I could hang out with this guy. So we also are going to present Mike Darga with a frog as well. So we have 2 frogs, and one for Sally and one for Mike. So with that, we're going to move on to our next new award as of this year. We're calling it the Young Environmental Leader Award. So honoring the work of our young leaders as incredible change makers for a better world today and for the future. And Lara Edwards will be presenting that award to the Roper School. So please stay tuned for that and click on the link embedded in this website. The next is the Best Friends of the Rouge Award, and this is the final phase of our program. This award was introduced in 1993 to honor those who have gone above and beyond their job description or regular call of duty to help the Rouge. The first recipients of this award were Dr. Oren Gelderloos, John Dingle, and Steve Marshall. So we have so many individuals who make the Rouge watershed a better place to live, work, and play. So we're excited to celebrate 3 special awardees who have gone far beyond the call of the watershed to help in their own way. And I will list each one of them. But again, as a reminder, please click on the links embedded in this website to learn a little bit more about those who've served our watershed so well. So first we have the City of Livonia. We have the Sierra Club and Diane O'Connell. So we hope you'll tune in to all of our virtual award ceremonies again that will be posted in tandem with this virtual presentation. At this time, I'd like to draw your attention to a few key dates here on this slide. Please note that our fall events are currently planned as is, with the extended volunteer preparedness plan that we are currently underway creating. Unless otherwise communicated, those should run as new normal. We hope you can join us. So looking ahead, we just want to share a few snippets of upcoming work. One is the Water Trail Future. We're expanding our water trails to include a trails department, which looks at the bisection of greenways and blueways along riparian corridors. Additionally, we'll be setting the stage for a wider menu of services from Friends of the Rouge, broadening our program titles to be more inclusive. So we're also going to be testing a new fee-for-service or earned revenue options to create more well-researched social enterprises to sustain the work we do and broaden our mission. Additionally, we're expanding our restoration work to a regional level through RainSmart, the SWIFT program, and other green infrastructure services. We are continuing to integrate ourselves into more policy and advocacy discussions. I was recently appointed to the Michigan Environmental Council Policy Committee that helps create internal guidance and messaging for Michigan Environmental Council staff. And I was also appointed to the Dearborn Water Advisory Council that helps oversee the lead and copper rule implementations for the city of Dearborn. We really have a desire to work cross-water topics to gain deeper understanding of how to uplift our mission through a regional and national lens, utilizing well-tested messaging that demonstrates a higher propensity for participation when drinking water is discussed. With that, I'd also like to just kind of give you an update about sort of COVID-19 related items, how our virtual offerings have transitioned. from our traditional programming to a virtual. As Sally mentioned, our spring bug hunt was canceled this year, but Sally did offer a really great live stream of that day. Her and her husband Paul did a day of sampling in Sally's backyard. Please check it out if you have a moment. It's great. Our Rouge education programs in person were canceled, and as Erin mentioned, we are offering virtual classroom materials and assistance. So please check that on our website as well. Matthew offered Rain Gardens 101 virtual. It was a virtual stream on Facebook Live. It was an incredible turnout, at least 1,000 views, I'm sure more. It's still available on Facebook and YouTube, so you can check that out. It's about an hour, and it's an incredible resource if you want to get started on a rain garden in your own backyard this spring. Additionally, Rouge Rescue, we switched that to a virtual game in lieu of sites across the watershed. We've had over 300 participants to date, and we will be continuing to offer that through the end of this month and possibly looking at a longer extension. Our hashtag Giving Tuesday Now emergency appeal was extremely successful, in part due to you and your assistance. We raised over $17,000, and we are going to continue to look at ways to raise additional funds this year and next as funding partners' priorities have changed or purse strings have tightened due to COVID-19. We also have a hashtag Nature is Open campaign that we're running. We're doing every Tuesday a live stream from the river called Take Me to the River. And I offered during the month of April a virtual coffee, and I will be considering doing another round. And I'm sure if you want to talk to any of the other staff members through a virtual coffee, they would love to talk to you. So your friends, us here at Friends of the Rouge, we're working really hard to plan a controlled, phased reopening of our offices in compliance with all local, state, and federal restrictions. We are also creating a COVID-19 preparedness and response plan and a COVID-19 volunteer participation plan with protocol to keep you safe while we create a cleaner and more vibrant Rouge River together. The Friends of the Rouge continue to work tirelessly toward our vision of a future where a clean and vibrant Rouge River is the center of our community. Each and every one of you are the reason that we know this vision can become a reality. We can't wait to serve you again in person. And with that, thank you for joining us today. If you have any questions, please check out our website to contact us personally. We have our emails, phone numbers listed on the staff page of our website. And until we see you again, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.